Hi everybody, it's Mr. Stewart here again with another assignment video for Toon Boom Harmony. And this is going to be for the Curious Character Part 1 assignment. Now, you ignore the dates here because the video here is being done at a specific time. But the first thing I want to talk about is the way the assignment is broken down. So we have part 1 and part 2 like we've done before, but like lip sync, this part 1 and part 2 are going to be 3 weeks total. So part 1 is going to be the first week, and we're going to be talking about in this video a pose test. Now if you remember a few weeks ago in class we talked about pose-to-pose animation and straight-ahead animation. And we're going to take some time to really kind of dive into that principle a little bit more and do what we call a pose test. Now that's going to be for the first week. Now a pose test, the best way to explain that is it's much like an outline. If you've written a paper for school and you've written an outline, a pose test is going to be the outline for the scene. It's going to contain all the major points, and but it's not going to take nearly as long as the full animation. And then part 2, if you scroll down here, is going to be a 2-week assignment, and that's where after you get the feedback from your grader, you'll be able to go through and starts part 2. So we have both week 10 and week 11. You'll be able to go through, apply that feedback to your animation, and then finish it out, making it completed, finished, smooth, in color if you want. So if we look at the calendar, again, ignore the dates, but this is when the beginning of week 9, you get the assignment. You have this first week here to get the Curious Character Part 1 done, and then you're going to get your review here in week 10. And then you're going to have the final 2 weeks of class before it is due. And it's going to be due, part 2 is going to be due the night before our last class. So this is going to be overall, this assignment will take us all the way to the end of the course. Now, I think we might have talked about this a little bit in class, and that's the use of video reference. I showed it a few weeks ago how I use video reference in animating, and we're going to go over that in more detail in level 2. But one thing I like to do is I like to shoot video reference for a number of different reasons, and I'm not going to go into all of them right now, but it's really helpful to be able to work out your ideas in a very quick way. Now, it's great to do sketches if you want to do what we call thumbnails and really kind of work out different ideas, and that's a great way to organize your thoughts. I also think it's a great way to organize your thoughts by doing an actual physical performance. So I've done a little bit of video reference here, and if I double click, you can see this is my video reference of a character being curious. And there's a few little things. I'll sort of have the object, whatever I make the object to be, I'll sort of have that sort of poof and explode in the screen. One thing I like to do with my reference, and this is very helpful in a pose test, is to use a frame counter. Now you can find the easiest way I found is to use QuickTime 7. So if I right click and I say open with QuickTime Player, it will open up the video. And if I go kind of play this video through, you can see that it's keeping track of how many seconds this is. So it's a total about 12 seconds. And really not that much because I don't come into screen. So it's about 10 seconds. Now, if I click on this, I can switch this to frame number. Now, I've made sure I exported out this video in 24 frames per second, so that now I know frame numbers of specific poses. So here on frame 90 is when my character is going to lean in. Here is when on 115 is when the turn is going to happen. So this allows me to go forward and begin to draw out the major poses on those major frames. Okay, so now I'm ready to get started with doing my test. And the first thing I want to do is just kind of get my background ready, my background area, and my overall kind of stage. So I'm not going to do a background this time. I'm going to use a color card and just click on the plus and hit color card. You'll see that this comes up. Now if I want to change the color, the white's really bright, so I could just take it down a notch or so here, and just make it a little bit like this. Looks pretty good. And you want to make sure you click on this and make sure that it's enabled. And then I'm going to hit close, and so that's there. I can turn this off and on if I want, but I want to make sure that when I export out my video and my animation that color card is on. I don't really love the squares in the background, so I'm just going to turn it off for the moment. And then I'm going to create another drawing layer, and this drawing layer we call planning. And I'll add that. Now what I'm going to do here is, bringing back my reference, I'm going to plan out where all of the different pieces are going to go. Now it doesn't have to be identical. I mean, right now I've got this object really, really low, but I don't have to do that. I can frame this out however I would like. And so I'll just put, just going to make this maybe sort of a table like this. And on top of that, in fact, since I'm sort of planning this out, I might just make this table and then add another drawing, and I'll say gift. And on this level, I'll draw out a kind of a gift here. With kind of maybe a lid on there. Now everything's pretty rough. If I want to kind of shrink this down or maybe move it around, I can do that. And I could also add in color. But for my purposes now, I'm going to leave everything pretty rough. I can go back and clean these things up later. This is more of simply me trying to plan out where all the major objects are going to be. And if I kind of put the color card here, you know, if I think about staging, I could do a few different things that maybe I'll get into in a little bit. But now I want to think about, where is my character going to be? And so now, let me do another layer. And for this one, I think I will put character planning. So I need to know kind of the overall, where are all these poses going to be? And if I look in and I find my major poses, I'm going to say my major pose number 1 is when the character comes and leans in, and then the major pose number 2 is looking back, major pose number 3, hand on the lips, and then major pose number 4 is leaning out. And so I want to make sure all of those poses work really well together, those 4 particular poses. Now, I could start it's a personal preference. A lot of times, sometimes I will like to kind of figure all of those things out on one particular pose, or one particular level. And I may or may not start with the I may or may not start with the first pose. I'm going to kind of keep looking back here, and just kind of let's see, that's not really, it's more, I think I like the expression I'm coming up with better than I have on my reference. Now, as I draw this out, you can see that I want my character to just sort of lean into screen like this. So I need to make some adjustments because this is going to feel like there's a lot of reach that's happening. And I don't know if I necessarily want that much reach. So I'm going to kind of work out the pose. And kind of figure out, this may take a few tries. Before I get something that I really feel good about. And I think this, for me, feels kind of fine here. So now I want to move this around. I want to kind of maybe make this bigger to really kind of adjust the scale. There we go. So I could sort of move this in like this, which would then maybe allow me to kind of play this up in the corner a little bit. And then I can move the gift and the table around. And so maybe make that a little off center. Maybe just a little bit bigger. And just really sort of plan out this stage. If I get started animating and I just started from frame 1, I wouldn't necessarily be able to sort of line everything up the way that I want. And it's worth spending a little time to try and kind of work out the overall staging. And really just kind of keep hitting the wrong thing. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of work the design a little bit more. And grab those different pieces. And this gives me, I think, a lot of room to play. And if I want to put that behind there, I can. Okay, so I'm going to save this file once I have kind of my basic layout. And now I might go in and draw on this character planning page another few different poses to sort of work out, but I can also draw them on different frames. So if I say this starts but is maybe kind of right at 281. So that's the other thing I need to do is kind of adjust my timeline here to get all the frames that I want. So I'm going to make this about 320 frames, which is going to mean pull this out and keep kind of keep giving myself frames. And I could kind of struggle against the small and the big of this, and it sort of, or I could go up here to scene, and I could say scene length, and I could say, okay, put in 320. Now, when you've got 320 frames, sometimes there's a temptation I want to see all the frames. I don't think it is as helpful as being able to just sort of scroll back and forth. It's a personal preference, but it does get, at a certain point, pretty big. Now, this is where, though, sometimes planning everything on one frame is, and on one layer, is helpful because I can sort of figure out my figure out all my different poses and drawings throughout all of those. All right, so with my color card on, I can sort of see if I've got the color card layer selected, those squares are there. But if I'm on another layer, then that's fine. But I'm gonna see if I can just expand all of these frames all the way to the end, and then just right click and say fill empty cells. This way I'm going to get my table all the way through to the end, my gift all the way through until I want it to change. And so that's helpful. And I could just kind of drag this along, move this. It doesn't take too long. And make this at 281, which I think is what I have. I had sort of worked out here around this or so. So now I want to work out my other poses. Now I could go backwards, I could go to the front. I'm going to go in and do this first one. And so basically I'm going to put this at around frame 78 or so. But you know, let me do the last one. There's a big lean in all the way until about frame 103. So instead I'm going to do that, and I'm going to come back to frame 103 and draw this in. Now, I could put on the onion skin. I could drag this all the way over, but that's not going to be terribly effective. One of the things that I'll do is, you could do this a couple of different ways. This is one of the reasons why doing these major poses on one level can be a good thing, but you go back and forth. Sometimes I will use a dry erase marker. Now I say this to all of my students and say, have your parents definitely take a look at your monitors. A lot of monitors, this isn't a good idea to use a dry erase marker. I have a a monitor where it's basically like a whiteboard surface. It's just a plastic surface, and so I can draw over that and see my pose really efficiently. Now, if you can't do that, in the past I bought a plastic cell online and I put that over my monitor so that I can draw on that cell. There's lots of different ways to do this, but one way is to say, okay, if I can't draw on my monitor, I can't use that, I can make a copy of this and put this into another drawing layer. So I'm going to go to frame 1. I'm going to paste it there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a transparency to this so that it is softer, and I can sort of make sure that it's I'm not going to get confused. And then, just like I did with my gift and my table, I'm going to select all of these frames, and I'm going to fill the empty cell. And now I can see it there even if I'm on frame 103. So this is a nice way to sort of say, okay, I'm basically seeing my onion skin without having to drag it around in a really strange, odd way. And now I can go back and say, okay, my first drawing, and I can sort of see, okay, is my head here closer? It's about the same distance. But I can play around with this. Now I'm drawing on the wrong level, so hold on, make sure I'm on the right level, and kind of figure this out as he leans in. Put an ear there. And I'm keeping everything super rough. I might want to, definitely kind of maybe clean some of these up, but I'm also not going to be too worried about it being a little messy. I see so many students try to do a clean line drawing and really sort of avoid this idea of keeping everything as rough as possible. I want to work out the movement. I want to work out the motion. So in that sense, I don't want to spend too much time worrying about a clean, nice drawing, because I might change this, I might move it around, I might decide I want it to kind of work from a different angle, and kind of go back in and say, I want to keep everything more in a 3/4. Approach. This gives me the ability to change things around very quickly, and if I don't like them, I can always go back. And so I'm going to keep this and maybe move this kind of up and down just a little bit. And move this down like that. So twisted it. So this is one of the really nice things about working digitally is I can go in and do all of these things very, very quickly. So I'm going to do this with my other two major poses. And a lot of times people will call these golden poses. The poses with I'm going to work most often. So I've got my first lean in, I've got my look back, this. So these two are going to work pretty well together. And they're going to be back a little bit. Okay, so the first one I'm going to have on frame 139, and then I'm going to do this on frame 160. So these are going to be a little bit closer together. So on frame 139, I'll put in just a quick little mark, and then a frame 161, put in a mark there too. So that just sort of gets me started and allows me to say, okay, I've got this first drawing too, and I can take this and say, all right, I'm going to copy this and go to my drawing, and I'm going to paste that in there onto the drawing level. So now you can see I've got both of them, which is basically the same. You could see over here in my drawing substitution, this drawing's becoming a bit of a mess, but it's basically the same as onion skinning. Now, I might have to redo all of that over again, but for the time being, this is working pretty well for me. Now I'm going to have a new drawing, and let's make sure I'm on the right. I should probably change this to my character, and I have this sort of and draw this over here. And then very quickly copy this, put it on my drawing layer, then go to frame 160, come back to my character layer, and have the hand come up. And hold on, that arm's probably not the best. But quickly sort of draw this in like this. Now, if I turn off my pose here, I can start to see I could start to see how those major poses are working. And I'm realizing that my character's starting to look a little bit different than this first one. So I'm going to go in and kind of redraw this head. And see if I can get this a little more in line with much more beautiful than it does curious. So let's. Yeah, I really love the expression here. So I might work on this a little bit more. Turn that off. And I really emphasize, this is one of the reasons why I'm so much a proponent of working rough, because especially in something like this, like a pose test, I want to have the freedom to say, I don't like that drawing, I'm going to completely cut it. I think this drawing needs to be bigger, so I'm going to make the head bigger. I'm going to keep everything as rough as possible, so that I don't feel bad about changing things. So I could go through now if I wanted to, and I could say, I could grab all of these cells and fill in the exposure. I don't really want to do that yet. I do have, as much as I'd love to see kind of how it's all working, I think I still have some other poses that I can now work within these poses. So these I would call my golden poses. But now I can start to go in and say, okay, the character starts to come in around frame 63, and then just continues to drift forward all the way. That's why I picked 103. So I can do my first entry pose on frame, I'm going to keep it on odd numbers, but on, say, frame 65. And if I go to frame 65 here, and I turn on my drawing pose, I know this is sort of where it's coming to, so I can have my very first kind of pose of my character sort of right here. And then the beginning, it kind of goes in pretty quick to frame 83, and from 83 to 103 it drifts a bit. So this is what we would call a moving hold. So I'll go to frame 83, and now that I can start to see the edges here, the other poses, I can go in and begin to start to use the onion skinning. So here I can draw in my character. And it's basically going to be pretty similar to this character. And then I can keep kind of working out those extra poses. So character begins to turn and then comes close about 115. So I can go to frame 115 and turn on my onion skinning here. I'm just going to keep everything here like this. And begin to draw out these. and see how that is working. And then maybe kind of go all the way to the end. And that's 140 before it starts to turn. So maybe 141, I want to keep this. And I might just say, okay, I want to move this to 141. Now, it automatically, when I moves, it kind of fills in. So I'm just going to keep everything neat and tidy, I'm going to go and clear the exposure there. Well, it only allowed me to do that one frame. So then I'm just going to go in here and delete. No, I don't want to delete the keyframes. It always gets me. I'll just delete. There we go. That's what always works. When deleting, I don't need to necessarily go to that exposure because I want to keep these frames on the same spot. I want to be clear that this is my key frame. And so I can then say there's a little bit of a blink and a turn on 147 and go right here. Begin this head turn back. And if I look at my hand is just beginning to kind of start coming up in my arm there, so I might add that in as well. And then maybe on 155, I can see that hand is starting to get pretty close. That the head has turned. And so I'm going to be pretty close here, but just bring that finger and just kind of trace the green pose. Now, I could do the tapping, all of this tapping and the leaning in, but I think I might just sort of keep that section still and then begin this sort of reach forward on frame 231. So there's going to be this sort of long kind of hold of this area. Now here again, I find myself in the spot where should I go back here and use my onion skin, which, you know, I can, but it's a back and forth of, do I want to use that other layer in the transparency? Do I want to use the onion skinning? And so here my head begins to lean forward. And my hand begins to turn, kind of turns around in space. And then begins to reach. Now, I kind of like this little extra piece where my finger comes down and then it's going to open up again. So I think I'd probably try to capture that when that happens. So that's at 243. And put that in. Maybe just have a little bit of forward movement. Like this here. And then that opens up and reaches forward on 261. So I could find those little subtle pieces. And I'm probably going to still kind of keep this character in the same spot there. Can keep everything really rough, and then begin reaching forward, and then it's going to slowly reach forward until I get my last little piece, which is right about 301. I want the gift to kind of do a little pop. Now I could play this a couple of different ways. I think I'm going to play it where I just have my character just frozen and then maybe reacts. But for right now, I'm going to put in on the gift level. I'm going to insert a new blank, insert blank cell. When I do that, I want to grab all of this and delete it. And now this will give me the opportunity to draw a gift sort of exploding. So I'm just going to have it anticipate down very quickly. And then just a couple of frames later, have it kind of spew out. And and then a few frames after that, it would come back to being just sort of empty. The lid, let's have the lid go off over here, and there's maybe some confetti like this. So now and I'll worry about the confetti and all of that. I'm going to fill out the exposures and just fill the empty cells. Then I'm going to maybe have my character respond. And this is where I might start to play with being able to see everything. So now I can grab the first piece, go to the end, and say fill empty cells. This way, I'm going to start to get a real sense of seeing my whole animation. So I can start to look at it. And I can see how I want this to work, and I can get a reaction from my character. Now, I didn't necessarily have a reaction in my video reference, but that's okay. I can do a quick little reaction in the same way I did the quick little movement of the gift exploding. So I'm just going to delete these. Well, I've got to first insert a blank cell. Then I'm going to delete this and kind of start this over. I also want to. I'm realizing I've got a frame where the table disappears. But here, if I put my character on there, I'm going to pull this off because I just want that one drawing. So I'm going to make it kind of a big movement. And have both hands kind of come in. And then really push this. And here, this, and now again, super rough, but I can fill those empty cells and fill these empty cells, and now I can loop this and sort of play everything. So, and there we go. That's my pose test. This would be as far as I would want to really go at this point, because I've been able to do all of this quickly, and I'm going to be able to get some feedback from my grader. So I would just export this out. Now, one important thing about the pose test is the pose test is going to be the same length, the video, as the eventual animation will be. So I would save my file, and then I would go to export a movie. Same as scene resolution. Now I want to do everything. I'll do a QuickTime movie. Let me browse and put this where I want it to be, and say pose test curious. And I usually say version 1, and then export that out, and take a moment, and then This is my video here, if I can get it to show up on screen. There we go. And this is the animation, this is the video that I would turn in. Now, it's very, very rough, but again, that is a good thing. I can go back in, I can start to look at volumes and consistency and all of those different things later on when I start to tie it down, and I have those full 2 weeks for part 2 to do that. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, good luck and have a great week.